Hi, you're listening to When Isabel Met Aviva, a podcast about rom-coms, female-driven screenwriting, and how to break into the entertainment industry. I'm Isabel.
And I'm Aviva.
And thanks for listening to our podcast.
Welcome back, everyone. Hi, Isabel.
Hello.
So, we're back with an interview today. But before we introduce our amazing guest, what have we been watching this week? Do you have anything to share about that?
Oh my gosh, no, I've only been watching like documentaries because I've watched the documentary about the Titan submarine.
Oh, yeah. Wow. Okay.
I watched the documentary about Astroworld. So yeah, I definitely have been in a more documentary phase, but I did go see Lilo and Stitch finally in theaters. And I have to say, I do really love that. I do feel that generally going to the movies and theaters is like coming back in maybe like a slow way. I just wish they would make better movies that are in theaters.
Preach. Agreed. So how was it? I haven't even seen the trailer for that one, which is
Oh my gosh,
shocking.
I think Lilo and Stitch is my favorite Disney movie, and my friend and I were talking about how it's such a like refreshing Disney movie because it's so real and it's so like it has such a good message, like it's about it's sad. Like it's literally about like two kids who lose their parents and then like the older daughter has to like become a mom for like the younger girl and like trying to parent. And there's like child services is all involved, and it's just it's a heavy movie for kids, but it's also so done so well. So I just feel like the story is so good. Like that's what I kept thinking, because like I thought the live action movie was good, but it just to me is not as good as like the cartoon or the like the cartoon version. But I remember like when I left that, I was just like, man, whoever came up with this story and with the idea of Stitch, because like I just love Stitch so much. I was like, they're geniuses. Like it's a good story and it's a great character. And like that was what I left it thinking, is like this is just a really great world that they've built. And that's like a feeling I think is so like that's what I love about movies, is feeling like somebody literally created this whole world with like aliens, because it is kind of sci-fi. Do you know anything about Lilo and Stitch?
I saw the animated film
Okay.
when it came out, but it's been so long I barely remembered the story. But you're convincing me. I'm gonna go see it.
No, it's so good. And I mean it does have a little bit of rom-com elements to it, because there is a boy that's like interested in her, but she's like, she's kind of a single mother in that way.
It's set in Hawaii, right?
It's set in Hawaii.
Okay.
So I was like, oh, I just want to go back. Yeah. It's like
anything set in Hawaii, I'm in.
Yeah, the backdrop, the music, like it's so cute. The little girl playing Lilo is absolutely adorable. Like it was a great family movie, and like I had a lot of fun. Like it was so
cool.
Like that was what I in general left it feeling, is like, yeah, I did think like, man, my Dating Zac Efron movie would be such a great summer movie to get people like in the theaters, like
producers listening, please read Isabel's script. Like I agree.
It's also just like someone like that. I'm just like, that's what we need to be thinking about. Like, because I did think about this with all the previews. For like all the previews are for these like action, like Marvel, Fantastic Four, Captain America, and the whole time both my friend and I were just sitting there, and I was like, do you watch any of these? And she was like, no. And I'm like, yeah, these all look so stupid, and it just feels like the same freaking movie. I don't understand how they can keep making them. And I get that like kids are into that, but there's that other part of me that maybe just, I don't know, maybe I'm wrong, but I just believe that like we would all go to the theaters to see like Zac Efron trying to find a girlfriend,
Yeah, that would be so fun.
Just fun movies, like even like Bridesmaids again, like Mean Girls. Remember how fun it was to go see those movies in theater?
No, I'm so with you. That kind of it's a good segue for the film I saw this past week, which was Materialists, as I told you guys last week. And
how was it?
It's not a rom-com, first of all. If anyone thinks it's a rom-com,
did they market it as a rom-com?
They market it as one in the trailers that I saw, and it kind of was giving this like Devil Wears Prada vibe. That's what I felt when I was watching it. And even if you go to IMDb, I'm pretty sure it says like, maybe it doesn't say rom-com, but it's like romance, comedy. It's not funny. But not to hate on it, but I'm just going to be completely honest on this podcast. Yeah, I didn't really like it. I would love to discuss it with you in a future episode once you see it, because it discusses dating and romance in a totally different way than I've ever seen before. So it was refreshing in some ways, but also just so depressing. Because I was going into it like, this is gonna uplift me, like romance, like it's gonna give. She even dresses like Andy in Devil Wears Prada. Like it really felt like aesthetically, like it was, you know, it could have been like a classic New York working woman rom-com. But so I will say the writing was interesting at times. Good for conversation after. But just like bleak and just about, I don't want to spoil anything, but it's very much about the transaction of a relationship, like monetarily, and how marriage is a contract and a transaction in some ways.
Interesting. Okay.
Kind of Pride and Prejudice, you know, about, you know, a lot of the themes of that, you know, is very much about, you know, finding a man with money and that sort of thing. So yeah, I don't want to spoil anything, but
it sounds depressing.
It's so depressing.
I feel a little too happy now. I feel like maybe like it's about 3 months ago would have really needed to watch this movie, but now I'm kind of like, I think I'll see Lilo and Stitch again. I want to watch the cartoon version of it.
We're on the same wavelength. I would not see Materialists again, but I do think it's one of those films that you could watch in like a film studies class and write an interesting paper about. Okay. That's what it felt like. Not something I'd ever rewatch, but something that, yeah, like it has interesting topics to further explore, I guess, about romance and love. But yeah, maybe I should have known. Have you seen Past Lives? You know, her other project.
This is the woman who wrote Past Lives, so I guess that makes sense to me that it would. This is the vibe, I feel like, of her writing. So that's a good thing, but different type of movie.
Yeah, exactly. I will say Chris Evans is in it, and I would love to see him in more rom-coms. I think this was kind of a weird fit. I don't want to spoil anything, but I do think he could be excellent in more rom-coms in a lighter script.
Is Pedro Pascal in it as well?
He is as well. Yes. Yeah. I don't want to spoil anything, but his character had some quirky moments. But I think he's a great actor too. And Dakota Johnson, that's her name, right? She's, I think, great in rom-coms too. But this wasn't a rom-com, and maybe we should just talk about this in another episode when you've seen it. So
okay, yeah, I'll definitely see it. I'll almost like maybe it sounds like it'd be good for an airplane.
Yes, if you're trapped on an airplane, it's a little slow, but what I do like about being back at the theater is like, yeah, you're gonna sit through it. You're not gonna like check your phone. You're gonna focus in a different way.
I mean, that's how I thought about Anora. Yeah. Like, I don't know that I would have enjoyed watching Anora not in the theater. Like, I do think Anora was great for like going to the movies and seeing that. I had a lot of fun seeing it. But if I was just sitting at home watching that, I probably would have gotten bored. Like, you know, after the first act, when there's like that 15-minute long scene where they're like, she's in her underwear, you know, like I feel like I would have been like, all right, now I'm gonna look at my phone.
Exactly. So like there's a little bit more like pressure if you're with an audience. I will say, a side note, I think maybe people have forgotten about movie theater etiquette.
Oh yeah.
There was this woman in the theater. So we went to like a matinee. So I was with my friend, and then there was like 8 other people. So not very many people. And there was this woman, she didn't care. She was commenting out loud like every scene. Maybe we should have complained, but I've never experienced that before, where it was kind of funny at first because she was like, avoid him, he's bad news, like stuff like that.
Yeah.
But then it kept going, and I like didn't care enough to like, I didn't want to like complain. I don't know, maybe I should have, but
yeah,
it was like getting annoying.
I was getting annoyed. There was definitely a group of kids in Lilo and Stitch that were like teenagers that were like talking, taking their phones out, like looking at their phone or talking. And I would be like, "Yo, we're here. I'm here to watch a movie." Like,
Quiet.
be that old person that's like, "Stop talking, stop laughing at the
Yeah.
like," because they were laughing in inappropriate moments, you
Mm-mm.
know.
Mm-mm.
Where I was just like, "Hey, this is a serious scene."
Yeah, that's not cool. That would annoy me
Yeah.
too. But anyway, we should probably introduce our guests.
Yeah, speaking of movie theater movies.
Yes. Great segue again. Yeah, today we are interviewing the writer of Bride Hard, which actually is an action comedy, a feminist action comedy that comes out today. So today is June 20th, Friday. It comes out today in
So
theaters.
exciting.
So exciting. So her name is Shaina Steinberg. And yeah, I've seen this trailer, like it played before The Materialist. So like it's a
Oh,
big
fun.
movie. Yeah.
That's so cool.
Yeah. So we're really excited to chat with her. We have not seen the film yet, but we're gonna see it. But she did send us the script and we took a look at that, which is
Yeah.
exciting.
I was so excited when I saw the file and it was like the spec script, you know, and I was just like, this is so cute. This is like, yeah, she wrote the spec script and now
So
it's
cool.
like in theaters. Like, how cool is that?
It's so cool. And yeah, this film genuinely I would watch, like even if we weren't doing this interview, because like when I saw the trailer, I was like, this looks really fun because it's very like I love like female action comedies, like Miss
Yeah.
Congeniality. What are some other examples? Like I just love that subgenre.
Yeah. It actually made me think of not Passport to Paris.
Oh yeah.
Even though that's not that, but aren't they like agents in that? They're
Are
like,
they?
I think they are. Aren't they like on the
Passport to
run or
Paris.
something?
Oh, are you thinking of the Australian one? Wait,
No,
Our Lips Are Sealed?
is when they're.
I thought they were undercover and Our Lips Are Sealed.
Our Lips Are Sealed. They're undercover because they had that like they saw the gem being stolen or something, right? But I think Passport to Paris. They're actually like.
Okay,
Wasn't there a scene where she's like moving through the vents with the guy and they're like trying to get to
now
something?
I'm thinking of Winning London.
Oh, Winning London. That's what it is. Oh my god, sorry, I mixed them up. Passport to Paris is different than Winning London.
Also an excellent film. Would love to have a whole Mary Kate and Ashley episode of the show. No, you're right. They're in the vents.
Yeah,
it's iconic.
Yeah. Oh my gosh, yeah, I was totally mixing up, London and Paris.
No worries. But anyway, yeah, I just think this film, it stars Rebel Wilson, who I love, and also her name's Anna Camp, right? She's in Pitch Perfect as well.
Yes, yeah.
And it just looked really fun. So yeah, I'm excited to chat with her because this is kind of the dream, right? Like,
yeah,
it's not even a streamer release, which is also the dream, but like this is a theatrical, big budget movie.
Yeah,
she wrote.
This is all amazing. Our dream, right?
This is literally our dream. And even though I don't think this is really like technically a rom-com, it does have rom-com elements. And I think it totally fits in like what we like to promote and talk about,
Yeah. I'm excited.
Yeah, me too. So let's welcome her into the chat. Welcome, Shaina.
Thank you. It's good to be here.
Yeah, it's so nice to meet you and congrats. Today is the day that your movie is in theaters, but we'll be releasing this episode a week later. So just for our audience to know.
Awesome. Love that.
Yeah, I mean, how does it feel actually, first off, like to know that like this is like the day your movie's coming out? And I mean, I'm sure that's gotta feel pretty cool.
It's really cool. I mean, I saw it for the first time on Wednesday at the premiere.
Oh, fun.
And so yeah, it was a really weird experience. I gave them the script, I did my final pass, and then of course, and I think they had some of Rebel Wilson's people punch it up. And then during the writer's strike, I kept getting calls from the WGA being like, there's a lot of rewriting going on. And I'm like, it's not me, I promise, and so yeah, there was a lot of rewriting that happened. and to see the final product was really, really interesting.
Oh, that's so cool. Yeah, we were kind of wondering the like story, I guess. If like so maybe we should start with that of like kind of how like when did you come up with the idea? Like did you just write this as a script, like for yourself and then, um Rebel saw it and like or like read it and wanted to be part of it? Like I'm kind of curious how that all came to
Yeah.
be.
So this actually started, I want to say almost a decade ago.
Oh wow.
Um, yeah, my neighbor and I were drinking one night. We were talking about being bridesmaids and friends' weddings. And I had had the experience where I went to one of my childhood friends' wedding, and she's amazing, and her friends were amazing, but she had also gone, to college somewhere else, and she'd gone to medical school somewhere else. And, we all have those groups of friends from different parts of our life. And so I went, and, all of these people are so, so lovely, but they know a different part of her than I do.
Mm,
And that strange feeling of, oh, are our lives still compatible?
mm,
Because she was very, very successful, still is, marrying a wonderful man. And at the time, I was very single and I was unemployed, working in Hollywood. And she was very stable, and we were just on such different paths. And so my friend and I were talking about what this was like, and we came up with the story together. She's my co-creator for the story, Cece Pleasance Adams, who's amazing, and she is a wonderful writer in her own right. And uh, yeah, we discussed it and we kind of put it together back in, I want to say 2015. And then I threw it in the back of the drawer and I didn't really think about it. And then during COVID, a producer who I work with all the time, who I absolutely love, came to me and he's like, I'm looking for something that I could probably shoot for like Netflix for, I don't know, 10, $20 million. And I was like, well, I have something. And so I sent it to him and we did a lot of rewriting work together. And finally, he felt like it was in a good shape. And then he took it out and he got other producers attached. And from there, they got Simon West attached, the director. And as a group, they all went to Rebel. And, she's obviously incredibly funny and a great actress. And yeah, and I feel like so, so lucky to have the cast we had.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, I love the Pitch Perfect franchise. So the marketing was definitely working for
Yes.
me when I saw the trailer.
Yeah, absolutely. They're so good together.
That's amazing.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I love hearing that story too about like how you came up with the idea of it because like and so we got to read the script. So we were given I think it was like an earlier draft is what they said.
Yeah, that I think that was the last draft I turned in, yeah.
Oh, okay. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
But even just like within the first like 10, 15 pages, it felt so relatable. And so I've also been a bridesmaid and been like,
Yeah.
and had that similar feeling of just really feeling like when you have known somebody for a long time, right? But then you're like kind of a different person or your lives are in different places. And then you go to this wedding where you see like their whole new friend group and their like friends and family and stuff. And
Exactly.
yeah, so I felt like you captured that really well and the like and that is
Oh,
what like
thank
drew me in the beginning. I was like, oh yeah, this like I get this, like I feel
you. Yeah.
this. So yeah.
Yeah. For sure.
Yeah. I think there are a lot of like universal experiences,
Mhm.
especially as women, because the majority of women I know are really, really good at keeping and maintaining friendships.
Mhm.
And so there are those people, and I have it with friends that I have now where I'll meet their childhood friend and I'm like, wait, what? And it's just a different side
Yeah.
of them.
Yeah.
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 Yeah, and how weddings can kind of be like I feel like it really showed like how they can be kind of triggering, right? If people
Oh,
are in different life stages and how just like you feel very alien when you witness that and you're not like at the same point as they are, you know?
Yeah.
oh, yeah. I was at a bachelorette party once, and there was a button that said, "I'm single!" exclamation point. Everybody else was partnered up and they
Oh
made me
no.
wear the button and it was just
Oh my gosh.
horrifying.
Oh no. That's a rom-com scene in
Yeah, that does
itself.
feel like a
Oh no.
rom-com.
It's funny now though.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I would love to hear a little bit about your background of just like, did you go to school for screenwriting? Like how did you, kind of walk us through maybe your journey working in film? Because it sounds like
Yeah.
like you kind of started in television, right? And then
I did. Yeah. So I went to school, and when I went to school, I thought I was going to be an art history major. And then I took a couple art history classes and realized that if I followed that path, I would never want to look at another piece of art ever again. So I switched my major over to being an English major, which I loved. I went to school in upstate New York, so the winters were cold, and I got to curl up in bed and read a novel, and I was doing homework, and it was the best. My school had a pretty strong film department as well, so I got into screenwriting then. I think I'd always known that I'd wanted to write, but for a long, long time, it didn't feel like a feasible career. Um, but yeah, so I graduated college and I knew I wanted to write, and I ended up going to grad school, not for writing, ironically, but while I was there, I studied the way that art is represented, or sorry, war is represented in art and literature. And that ended up being a foundation for both the first script that got me my agent, and also for, I have a series of novels out right now. And so the series was kind of based on that idea of what happens after war. You know, how do people put their lives back together? How do they cope? So yeah, I moved out to LA from New York City, and I swore that I was going to hate it. Like, I sublet my apartment. I didn't give it up. Swore I was going to hate it. And then I was going to go back to New York and be like, well, I tried. And I got really lucky. I got an internship at Malcolm in the Middle, where I made some of the closest friends of my life. And then I just kept getting jobs. And it wasn't like I fell into them. I mean, I worked hard for them. I picked up the phone. I cold called shows, but I consistently got jobs, and I felt really lucky, and I sort of started to form a life in LA. And I have to say, being in a TV writer's room is basically writer's boot camp. You get to sit there with all of these incredibly smart, talented people and go through beat by beat of what makes a story and what makes it work and what makes it doesn't, and what makes it not work. I worked on a lot of procedurals, so I worked on Cold Case and I worked on a show called Chase, and they were really, really good at teaching me when you set up the initial evidence, when you set up the misdirect, how you do these things. And so I'm so grateful for that type of plotting experience. But I also worked on episodic dramas. Like, I started on Everwood as well. I was there for 2 seasons. And, you know, that's such an emotional show. And it's something that I think Greg Berlanti specifically does really, really well, is getting that emotion, getting that humanity. And so I worked as an assistant for about 10 or 12 years. I ended up getting my own agent. And from there, I left the show that I was on, which was Alcatraz. And I decided to kind of just go out and try and get staffed and do a bunch of pitching. And I sold a couple of pitches and ended up getting to write those, which was amazing. And yeah, it's kind of funny to think about, because there was just a whole chunk of time, like a couple of years, where I was pitching a lot and I was writing on spec a lot. And I was also reading and commenting on screenplays to, you know, keep the lights on. And yeah, I guess, you know, time progressed and I kept working, and, you know, I ended up getting married, which was great. And I ended up having my son, which is also great. Uh, but when I left for my honeymoon, there was the WGA strike against the agents. And so, you know, there was a break there. And then when my agency finally signed with WGA again, I called up my agent and I was like, hey, I'm 8 months pregnant. And he was like, oh yeah, you know, call me back when you are ready to work. But yeah, I actually didn't have an agent when I sold Brideheart. It was my producer who did a lot of the work from there.
Wow.
And yeah, that has been an incredible experience. And in terms of my books, I had written a screenplay, which I loved, but I didn't necessarily, like, you know, screenplays are so condensed, and I really wanted to expand that world. And everybody I met was like, you know what? We need IP. We need intellectual property. That's what we're basing so much on. And I was like, okay, well, I'm gonna go create that intellectual property. So hopefully I can turn it into a TV show or a movie. Um, and yeah, I think that writing in general, writing in LA, especially right now, is a lot of doing your absolute best, writing a lot, keeping your fingers crossed, and hopefully being really good at budgeting.
Mm.
Yeah.
Yeah, that makes sense. But Bride Hard is pretty high budget. I mean, like when you
Yeah.
when you're reading it, it has all those elements that they say, like, it's not an indie.
Yeah,
It's
no,
like
it's not an indie. Yeah.
so that sounds so fun to just like have no limitations with that.
I think it's great being able to write and just be like, I don't know, this is in my head. I'm going to put it down.
Yeah.
And I think it is really a different process of I have an idea and then I'm going to go write that on my own versus I have an idea and somebody is paying me to write that idea.
Mm.
And
Yeah.
yeah, and both have their value. It's really motivating to know that somebody is paying you and somebody is going to read this in
Mhm.
order for you to get stuff done. But
Yeah,
also, when you're doing it on spec, it's all yours.
Mm.
You can create whatever you want.
yeah, that's really
Yeah.
special.
Yeah, I was kind of curious when you were saying that you were like there's like a time period where you were like kind of pitching and writing on spec. Do you mean that like were you pitching ideas to like producers that you knew and then like they were interested in an idea and so then you wrote that on spec, or were you like coming up with your own ideas for yourself, right? Just kind of like
It's,
pitching those.
it's a combination of both. There were times when I had an idea that I really loved and I would go and write that on spec, or I would take it to a producer who I work with a lot. It was like, hey, I have this idea, and I would develop it with him, and then we would take it out and pitch it together.
Mm.
There's also been times when I've gone on, what's called a general meeting where
Mhm.
your agents are like, hey, you might get along with this person. And I'll go to those meetings, and, usually the people are so lovely. And a lot of times they'll be like, hey, I have this idea for X, Y, and Z. And if you spark to it, you can usually have like a really good conversation.
Mm.
And from there, go home, think about it for a couple days and write a couple pages of like what kind of a project this could be.
Yeah.
And if they like your take, then yeah, working with them on this idea together to take it out and pitch. Yeah.
Yeah.
I was curious as well, just like, yeah, are original stories like selling right now in LA, like from your observations? Because Isabel and I talk a lot about, how we're a little disgruntled with the amount of like just like derivative content
Oh my.
that's being
Yeah.
made in theaters, especially, but just generally. So I'm just curious, like what you've observed, especially like post writers strike, and is there hope for us at all?
I mean, it's so hard right now. The WGA actually sent out a letter a couple months ago that was like, hey, you know how you guys feel like there's not that many jobs? And we're like, yeah. And he's like, well, guess what? You're right. There's 40% less jobs this year than there were last year, which is not at all encouraging.
Yeah.
I think that what I have been hearing a lot is if you have a good idea, you have to go out and write it on spec so that people can hold the script in their hand and know exactly what it's going to be. Because unless you're Shonda Rhimes, Greg Berlanti, Ryan Murphy, people want a sure thing right now. And I can't say that I blame them. Making content is so expensive. Like shooting a TV show, shooting a film, they're wildly expensive. And so I understand people saying like, I want to know this, and looking at Marvel movies and be like, if I'm going to spend $200 million, I want it on a known product, like a known quantity. The problem
Yeah.
is I think that it really stifles innovation.
Mm.
There are a lot of people who have really great ideas that may never get seen because they don't have access to agents or they don't have access or the ability to get these scripts read.
Mm.
And it's really hard, and even with people who are really well established, they're still struggling with, hey, I have an idea and it's a little bit different. And, you know, trying to find people to invest in that idea.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And what I'm realizing about films, because coming up in TV, it's a writer's medium. And writers control all of it from the very, very beginning to what costumes are going to be worn. They have to approve of locations. They're in the edit bay at the end. Whereas with films, it's like, okay, you hand over your script and like, maybe you're included, but maybe you're not. They're going to go out and offer this to directors without talking to you about it. They're going to go get actors without talking to you about it. You might go and see the final thing and be like, oh, okay, so that's what happened.
Yeah.
And so yeah, it's just a really interesting process in terms of like how much control you have.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
For Bride Hard, like how, if you can share, like, were you able to go on set? Like, how involved were you? It sounds like you have to just practice relinquishing control, which would be hard, but
Yeah. It was really hard. I have to say, like, it was really, really hard. And then when stuff was coming together and I was writing what would turn out to be my final drafts, I got a 3-book deal from my publisher, which made it a lot easier to let go and focus on something else because it wasn't the only thing going on. But yeah, with Bride Heart, it was literally I turned in my script and they said thank you. And that was the last I heard from them, and I would hear from the grapevine of like, oh, this is happening or that is happening. And, it's shot during the writer's strike. So obviously I was not allowed to be on set. I was not allowed to be working at all. A friend of mine called me in December of 2023 and she's like, hey, my post house is like bidding for a contract on Bride Hard. Can you put in a good word? And I was like, I didn't even know it was in post already.
Oh, wow.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. So it's definitely a challenge to let go and to, turn up and be like, okay, let's see.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm sure that varies too from script to script, right? Because I feel like if there's a script that you're like super personal to you, that might be like harder, versus something that you're kind of like, this is like a fun idea that I had, and I just like.
Oh yeah, definitely. I think that Bride Hard was definitely a less personal script. Right now, my manager has a script that I love and that feels very personal, and I think it feels personal because I love it so much. So yeah, just kind of hearing like, oh, okay, well, we're gonna go make offers to directors, and you're like, that's great. Who?
Yeah.
I'm not necessarily like getting that information, but yeah, I'm hoping to be a little bit more involved in that one.
Yeah. I feel like our audience and us just like we dream of going to a premiere of our own movie, and can you just tell us, just for like manifesting purposes, just what was that like, and like just going to a movie premiere that had all these famous people, and you wrote the project.
It was amazing, and I am so glad that I had my co-writer Cece there with me. Because, we arrived and we met up and she's like, oh my God, I've been so nervous all week. And I was like, oh, that's what I've been feeling. That's why I am cranky and why I felt like it took me forever to get ready. Oh, okay. And, obviously naming that emotion helps. But yeah, she's like, well, we have to go walk the red carpet because when else are you going to?
Yeah.
And it was an experience I'd never had before. And it was so, so fun. And everybody's really, really nice. They're like, oh, can you look over here now? Oh, can you look over? And you're like, yes, absolutely. Thank you. Thank you so much. Yeah. And it was just really incredible. But at the same time, also, as a writer, you're very anonymous. Nobody looks at your face and recognizes you. So you get the opportunity to kind of just take it all in and eavesdrops on conversations. And it was really fun.
Yeah,
that's so exciting.
That's so cool.
Yeah.
And is this the first movie that you've had made that like you got to see in theaters? Oh, that's so cool.
So cool.
Yeah. Yeah, no, it's amazing. It's really a thrill.
Wow,
Yeah.
Yeah,
yeah,
that's awesome.
congrats.
I'm looking forward to seeing the film, and then now that I have the reference point of the script to
Mhm.
see like what I still recognize, and
Yeah.
hopefully there is some stuff there that I will recognize.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's so cool.
Thank you. Yeah. It's been
I'm
a really fun process. I feel so lucky.
Yeah, that's so cool.
Yeah.
I'm curious, just, the generic advice question, but
Yeah.
just like for writers trying to break in right now, um, yeah, what is your advice? And probably having a manager is important.
Yeah,
But
I
I'm
mean,
curious.
like when I got my first agent, I was like, this is going to be amazing.
Yeah.
And then, my agents were really nice people who didn't set up a lot of meetings.
Hmm.
Yeah.
When I sold Bride Hard, I didn't have a manager. I didn't have an agent. I had my lawyer negotiate the deal. It was really about, um, it was really about contacts. And I think, with my producer, I feel so lucky because, um, he's somebody who's always really had faith in me, so he's really been like, hey, I believe in her and I believe in her project, so I'm going to take them out to other people. And that's how, for me, a lot of my work has been getting made. Um, so I feel really lucky to find them. And, I don't, I don't entirely know what advice to give writers coming up because everybody comes at it from a different place. I've known newspaper writers who have just, they're journalists and then they go straight into the writer's room, or people who have medical degrees or law degrees. They write a spec script, it does well, and they go straight into the writer's room. I came up a little bit more of the traditional path, which I think is rapidly disappearing behind me, which was I started as a writer's PA on Everwood. And then, I got bumped up to showrunner's assistant. And so I got that experience. And, by that point, I had a resume, and Everwood ended after the fourth season. And I literally picked up the phone and I called every lot in the city. And I had gone through, and this was a while ago, so it was before streaming. So it's kind of like we had network TV, and if you did not get a job by June, you weren't working in TV until pilot season came around.
Mm.
Now, obviously, there's a lot more opportunity. There's a lot more shows. They're shooting at all different times. But yeah, I would, pick up the phone and I'd be like, okay, well, this is a Warner Brothers show. So I would call Warner Brothers lot and be like, hey, can you put me through either to like the show names office or, the executive producer's office? And, usually I got through and I would talk to somebody who was just like me, an assistant, which I had to remember because I hate cold calling. It's so nerve wracking.
Yeah.
And I would just call them up and be like, hey, I am a writer's assistant and I am looking for a job. And if you have any openings on your show, can I send you my resume? And I did it over and over. And I called shows multiple times. And, sometimes, like when I got my job on Cold Case, first they were like, nope, we're good. We already have all our assistants set. We're fine. And then I called them back like 2 weeks later and I was like, hey, I'm just calling in to see if you need anybody. They're like, actually, we do. Yeah, come on in for an interview. So I think there's a lot of persistence, and yeah, I got my agent because I was working on a pilot called Chase. And while we were staffing it, I interacted with so many agents' assistants and I became friendly with them on the phone while we were setting up meetings. And when the show was fully staffed and we were off and running on that side, I called up or I emailed a lot of the assistants and I said, hey, I am a writer. Is there anybody at your agency who might be looking for more clients? And that's how I got my script in to be read. I worked with Mark Guggenheim when I was working on Everwood. He was across the hall on Greg's other show, Jack and Bobby. And he's a really, really wonderful person. But I remember he said to me, because I was like, oh, it's the question everybody asks, like, how do you get an agent? And he was like, don't worry about your agent. When you write something good enough, you'll be fine. Like, people will read it. It will get you where you want to go. And I found that was really true. Like, I wrote so many scripts, and then I wrote one that I knew was really good, and that was the one that got me my agent. Yeah.
That makes sense.
And I think also when you're writing, just like when you're starting anything, hopefully you write it and you're like, this is good. I'm going to keep going. But you have to keep going. You can't take that thing that you think is great at the beginning and be like, this is it. I'm done. You have to keep writing and writing and writing and writing and writing and writing. And I remember when I was a PA, there was a writer who was willing to read my script. And I was like, okay, great. This is amazing. They're going to love it. And they're going to tell me it's great. And they're going to give it to their agent. And I gave them a script and they were like, okay, so it's an interesting first draft. I've done 100 drafts of this. Like, what are you talking about? And then they proceeded to shred my script. And in the moment, it really sucks. And it was a lot of stuff that I really needed to hear. It was a lot of stuff that I needed to work on. And I feel so grateful. There were so many people along the lines who, were really established writers who would be willing to read what I wrote and give me notes on them. And I think that, most people don't have that kind of access, and I don't think you do unless you're working on a TV show. But turn to your friends, turn to other writers, like reach out to people. I know that the WGA has a mentorship program. Other places have mentorship programs where people might be willing to read. And be really open to what people are saying. I think that it's so easy to sit there and think like, oh, well, you don't understand what I'm getting at, or you missed this teeny tiny clue on page 3 that explains everything.
Yeah.
And, and it's true. Maybe somebody did not read your script carefully enough. But the flip side is maybe they didn't see it because it wasn't there. Like, it's there in your head and you read it and you're like, no, I know what this is. And it's something we all do. And we need people to be like, actually, let me point out these problems. Yeah. And I think it's important being able to like hear that and willing to hear that and willing to make changes.
Yeah,
Right.
I love what you're saying because it reminds me of something we talk a lot about on our podcast, which is just like, I think so many writers, we just get stuck on actually finishing the script. And sometimes it's like, because we get caught up in the like, oh, what is a producer going to think? They're going to read this and it's going to sound expensive. And sometimes it's like, you need to just not think about any of that stuff. Just write it. And like, yeah, I agree. It's like, if it's this good story, that will speak for itself. And then, yeah, maybe you like somebody will be like, okay, this would work better if it was this, or like give you that feedback that you can like then work with. But I think it's like a lot of us, I mean, I struggle with this. I don't know how you both feel, but I feel like sometimes for me, it is just hard to just like actually finish the script because I'm sitting there thinking, oh no, the page count is getting too long, or like, oh, this is like, I don't, and it's just finish, just write.
Yeah, I'm actually in the middle of that process right now because I'm writing my third novel, and it's probably going to end up being about like 300 pages. I just crossed page 315 and I have a lot more to write. I always write long. Like, I just know this about myself. I'm like, okay, I'm going to throw it all in and then I'm going to edit the shit out of it.
Yeah.
But while I'm writing, unless it's like going back a couple pages to kind of see where I am, I never reread anything that I've already written because I think it's so easy to sit there and be like, oh God, I didn't like the language there, or oh, what if this and what if that? And like, it's so easy to get in your own head. And I think that a lot of it is just getting it down on on paper, and then being able to be like, I can fix this,
I love that. That's great advice. I want to try that because I feel like I'm that person who like will sit there and keep reading the same 20 pages to edit it and like change like, oh, I could punch this up here or there. And then it's like, I'm never going to finish the script if I don't move on from the first 20 pages.
Well, and I think also, by the time you get towards the end of whatever project that is, the characters have grown in your head and you understand them better, and situations have changed because you understand your characters more, or, sometimes they do something and you're like, wait, I wasn't planning that, but the dialogue took me there, and oh, there's this thing that I didn't see that's actually kind of awesome. And so I think it's really important to just let all of that flow. And then you can go back and be like, oh, the character that I started writing initially is really different from how they turned out. So now I need to go revise the beginning to set all of this amazing character arc up.
Yeah.
Yeah, I love that. Figuring out like who your characters are as you go, kind of in the, I always like to call it the vomit draft, kind of a gross name, but like it makes me feel like the stakes are lower for myself, and then I can be more creative and not feel as pressured.
Yeah. I've also definitely done like drafts of scripts where I'm like, okay, I'm going to write this. And then I wrote it, and then I was like, and now I'm never going to look at it again. Okay.
No. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Sometimes you just have to be willing to be like, oh, this did not work out.
Right. Yeah. Like, I thought this was
but you
gonna
tried.
work. Yeah.
Yeah.
I'd be curious about your like writing habits, your routines. I feel like that's really fun I want to start asking more of our guests this. I think it's fun to just hear what your writing routine is like.
I will say my writing routine has changed recently. Because it used to be like, having a child kind of throws a giant wrench into what used to happen. It used to be like when I was single, I'd wake up and I'd like have breakfast, and around 10 I'd sit down and write, and then maybe I'd like wander around a little bit, and then I'd keep writing, and then maybe I'd have dinner at some point, and maybe I'd stop or maybe I wouldn't, and it was very loosey goosey. And I had carried a lot of that through most of my recent writing because it was working. I was like, all right, fine. I'll kind of just like, oh, I got some done today. Yay. And maybe I got some more done over here. Okay, great. Cool. And it stopped working for me. Like it genuinely just stopped. I lost both of my parents last year. And so I had no idea how much grief was going to be a bulldozer through my brain. And, I remember all of last summer, like, don't have many memories, but I remember thinking like, oh, I should write. And then not doing it, and just not doing it, and not doing it. And, my editor was amazingly understanding. But I got to the point where, the draft of my book is due September 1st. And I was panicking about it. And panicking obviously does not help the creative process.
Yeah.
But I signed up for a mentor through this group called Sisters in Crime. And she has been incredible. Like she has given me a time management system, and talks about the way I have set it up is that I have like 5 little blocks, which I use playing cards to show, and 5 little blocks each day. Each block represents half an hour. And then you have that like dopamine hit of being like, I did this. And you take that block and you put it on the other side.
So fun.
And it really does feel good. And I think that it can be really intimidating for me to sit down and be like, okay, I need to do 4 hours of work today. And instead, it's much easier to be like, I need to do a half an hour of work right now. I'm going to put my phone in the other room. I'm just going to focus on this. And it amazes me how much I can get done in a half an hour, or stretching that half hour and be like, oh, no, it's going well. I'm going to keep going. Okay, I'm going to keep going. And also, like, once I have finished my 2.5 hours of like intense work, I don't necessarily feel at the end of the day of like, oh, I should go do more. Like my brain is tired. I know I need to recover. And it's much easier to be like, oh, I can just go read another book, or I can go watch a TV show, or I can just go to bed without having to feel the guilt. And so this has been really a game changer for me.
I really like that.
Yeah, I'm going to try that.
That's a great idea. Yeah, I love like a sticker chart for me is good, but I love that like idea of multiple visual things a day to like move.
Oh yeah. And I also on the side of it, I did, a list of all my chapters. And so like being able to take that chapter and move it from the to-do pile to the like done, it feels good.
That's
Yeah.
amazing. Yeah.
It's how I
Yeah.
feel about I learned about the Strava app this year. I learned about the Strava app this year. I don't know if either of you know what that is. It's
I
like a
love
fitness
Strava.
stuff. Yeah. But it honestly has helped me. Like, it like helps me hold myself accountable because every time I work
Mhm.
out, I
Right.
log it, and then and
Yeah.
I feel like I can track it. I almost feel like we
Mhm.
need that as like a writing version where you can kind of like log,
Yeah.
That'd be
'cause
fun.
yeah,
Yeah.
it really does. It feel like it helps me stay accountable. I like being able to see in my feed, like, oh, look at my other friends doing their runs and
Oh,
everything. And
yeah.
Mhm.
That's a great idea.
yeah, right. I know.
Yeah, maybe we should
There's an app
develop an
idea.
app. That's a great idea.
Yeah.
A podcast app.
Mhm.
Yeah, it's kind of like the Pomodoro. I don't know how to say it correctly. It's like the method where you set a timer
Oh,
for like, I think
yes.
it's 30
Yeah.
second chunk or
Yeah.
30 minutes with
Chunks.
like
Yeah.
5 to 10 minute breaks. It's kind of very similar to what you're
Yeah.
saying. I have it like saved on my
Yeah.
tabs here, but yeah, I think just getting started
Mhm.
is often just the hard, once you
Really.
get into that flow in
Yeah.
like 10 minutes,
Yeah.
then you can go on for longer.
Yeah.
So
Exactly. Like once it's really hard to get into that state. And then once you do, because I think, at least for me, a lot of times when I will start, I'll be like, oh, I don't know where I am. I don't know what's going to happen. I don't think this is
yeah,
going to be good. I don't, and there's so much self-doubt.
Yeah.
And
yeah,
then being able to be like, okay, let's just turn that off and go do the thing. And then we can judge it later.
Yeah.
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 Yeah. Something else I've been doing that's been helping me is like I've been breaking up my script into like act one, act two, act three, but like in separate final draft documents, right? So then I
Oh,
kind of
yeah.
like just go into
Mm,
act one and I just am like, I'm
Yeah.
just writing act one, not thinking about anything
Nice.
else. Like, and I
Yeah.
just let it be wherever it's at. And then
Mhm.
like today, for one script example, I'm just working in act two. And I'm like, I don't,
Yeah.
none of the other acts matter. I'm just like, this is just where I am.
Yeah.
I'm just dropping everything here. And so I kind of like having it visually right. And it's like three separate documents so that I can like
yeah,
go into each to edit. And then
Yeah.
ideally I'll get those like the page numbers down on them and then like combine them all. But it's like kind of
Mhm.
nice to just for my brain compartmentalize in
Yeah.
that sense where I'm like, we're only
mhm.
talking about whatever's happening in act two in this
Oh,
document,
yeah. No,
you know?
that's a great idea. Yeah.
I like
When I was working on a show once and our outline got blown up on a Friday, or our script got blown up on a Friday, and we were shooting Monday.
Oh gosh.
And my boss came to me and she's like, well, what are you doing this weekend? And I was like, oh, I'm gonna go play volleyball with my friends. And she's like, no, what are you doing? Okay, what am I doing? And yeah, so she gathered like 5 writers together and we lived in, this conference room for the weekend, and we already had our locations set. So we rebroke the entire story to the locations, and we spent one day completely rebreaking the story. The next day, we divided up the acts and everybody got one. And we wrote that act and then we smushed it together into a giant Franken draft. And all of us read it. And we then, had notes and we rewrote it together. And, it was ridiculously hard. And I was so tired at the end of it. And it was such an amazing experience being able to kind of like look at how everything goes together, you know?
Yeah, that sounds really cool. Also to like have people to plot with like that.
Yeah.
I have never, I've written a few TV pilots, but like obviously haven't been in a writer's room yet.
Yeah.
And like that just sounds so nice to just have plot feedback in real time,
Oh, absolutely. Yeah,
Mhm.
no, I mean, when you are working with a great group of people, there's nothing better.
Yeah.
Sometimes you're working with significantly less great people, which is a different experience,
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
Are you
yeah.
still doing TV writing or like do you want to do more TV writing or are you kind of moving more into it sounds like focusing on your novels and film?
Yeah, I mean, I love TV writing, and I think that when you have great TV, there's nothing better because you get to fall in love with these characters and you get to follow them for a time, like it's fantastic. I'm a person who really loves reading series. I love watching series. Um, but the last show I worked on in TV, we were working 100-hour weeks, and
Oh my
I have a
God.
family now, and I can't
Yeah.
do that. And a lot of my TV experience was before Me Too. There were some stuff that happened on shows that was not awesome. I think that from what I hear, it's a lot better than my experience was, that the hours are saner, the people are saner. And I want to believe that. And if I could find a great place, I would love to go back to TV. But my son is still young, and our lifestyle, my husband's a lawyer and he works really long hours. And so our lifestyle honestly works because I have a flexible schedule.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I like that about features for sure. It seems, a little more independent,
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. And I think, you don't have that help plotting, which can be really, really hard. But the flip side is it can be all yours, and, that first draft, like we were talking about, you can build in anything. You can build in this like incredible dream trip to Paris because you want to go to Paris, and you're like, ooh, maybe I'll be on set. Okay, be in Paris. And, then eventually somebody reads your script and they're like, how about Oklahoma? And you're like, yeah, okay, I can make that.
That's so funny. Yeah, you have to be a little flexible about that.
Yeah.
I would love to talk about outlining, which
Oh,
we haven't
yeah.
talked to any guests about in a while, but just about, are you, I guess they call it a pantser, is that what they call it, or a plotter?
Yeah.
And
When I first started writing, I was like, I can do this. Let's just see where it goes. Working in TV, you cannot be that because you have to get your outlines approved. And now I write very extensive outlines. So like for my last two books, my outlines were 40 pages each.
Wow.
And I love it because it kind of feels like a first draft where you're going through and you're putting the emotions down, you're putting the character beats, and you're putting the plot points. And you're kind of like, okay, does this all work before I turn it into like a 300-page book? And it's nice being able to turn that document into someone and have someone be like, yes, that works. I like this. Or maybe go back and think about these things. And so to get sort of like, guidelines in terms of I am on the right path, or I need to rethink this before I go in really deep, for me is so helpful. And then I think the part that I really love is, you're talking about how hard it is to start at the beginning each day. It's much easier when you have a paragraph about what that chapter or what that scene is going to be. And sort of, it never ends up looking exactly like it's going to look in your outline, but knowing the beats of what needs to happen in that section is huge. And having a place to start to get those beats in and that information out is really, for me, it's really important. I feel like it makes the process of what is going to be a 400-page draft feel like, oh, I can write 8 pages. I can write just this tiny section. And yeah, I admire people who can keep all of that in their brain and just write start to finish. I am not one of them.
Yeah, that would be challenging.
Yeah. But I mean, I think also like, because I always start with a cork board and I start with cards on a cork board, and I'll just write down everything that I think should happen. Be like, oh, I like this scene, or I want these characters to do this. And sometimes there is a place for it, and a lot of times there's not, and you can let it go. But yeah, I think the small steps are really important to lead to the bigger ones.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm kind of curious too, then, like, what advice you have for our audience and other writers of like, once you do finish that script that you feel like you are done with it, this is like, you feel good about it. Is your advice to like, first have a friend read it, or try and like, connect with the producer or director or somebody that you would think would be a good fit? Like, what does that sort of look like for you?
So I would say if there is no time constraints, my best advice would be to make the script the absolute best you think you can make it and set it aside for 3 months, and then come back to it and see if there's any improvements you can make. Because I think that time and that distance is huge in being able to look at your own work and get a little bit of perspective on it. And I think it's also really important because all of us, writers, non-writers, everybody is really, really busy, and time is such a precious commodity. So when somebody's reading your work, it's a huge favor It's
Yeah.
massive to be able to say, hey, can you take, you know, what is going to be a minimum of 2 to 3 hours out of your life and read this and give me notes. So I think it's best for you to make it as good as humanly possible before you give it to somebody. And then they're going to give you notes. And I think that it's really important to be open to them. And then maybe you give it to someone else. I think in terms of trying to get it to an agent or a manager or a producer, if you get that break, like if you are able to get it to somebody, it needs to be amazing.
Mm.
It needs to be really, really fantastic. It needs to be something that they're going to stop and be like, wait, I haven't, okay, I
Mm.
I want to keep going on this. I want to know more about this person.
Mm.
Because, you know, a lot of people won't read past the first 5 pages if they're not into it.
Mm.
And it's just, you know, I wish that people were like, yeah, I'm going to give it a full try. But having gone through staffing and having been the person who was doing all the pre-reads on the scripts, you know, I like to give people at least 20 pages. But when you have to read 300 scripts, it's really hard to do that.
Yeah.
So I think making it really, really, really good is the most important part. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And then in
And how do
terms
you,
of
sorry.
how to get it to people, I honestly have absolutely no idea. I mean, I wish I could be like,
Elusive.
oh, like sign up for the blacklist or join this magazine,
Mhm.
whatever. I only know my path, you know, and
Yeah.
it was what worked for me. It was really time consuming. It was great because it taught me so much, but it took a really, really long time.
Yeah.
And, you know, a lot of my friends who work in the industry, like Cece, who I co-wrote the script with, she does a lot of variety shows. And she was on James Corden for a while. She was on The Talk. She, every time she used to go for a job, whether it was big or small, she had to write a packet. You know, she had to write a packet that was like, these are timely jokes. These are these things. And they would tell her what she wanted and she'd stay up late and do that. You know, I have friends who worked on Family Guy and they got their job on Family Guy because they were assistants there for like 3 years.
Mm.
You know, so again, everyone's path is really different.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I think I know somebody who was a really big fan of Everwood and, you know, they did a lot of reviewing of it. They wrote episode synopsis and, you know, this was a long, long time ago. And they wrote to Greg Berlanti. You know, they sent letters to Warner Brothers and he wrote back and they formed sort of like a friendship and he staffed her on one of his shows.
Mm.
You know, so again, everyone's path is different.
Yeah.
I think that you should never feel weird about reaching out to somebody because the worst they're going to do is not read your letter.
Mm. Yeah.
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 Persistence.
I will also say, like, send a letter, don't send your script because a lot of places legally cannot read it without a waiver.
Mm.
Yes. Yeah. Unsolicited material.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's good advice.
Yeah.
Okay, so we're kind of getting close on time here. Before we go into our rapid fire questions, is there anything else about Brideheart or like your script or any writing that you want us to ask you about or that you want to talk about?
Yeah.
We can talk about my novels.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, so I have 2 books. The first one is called Under the Paper Moon, and the sequel for it is called An Unquiet Peace. The first one, Under the Paper Moon, came out in April of 2024. An Unquiet Peace came out in April of 2025. So they're both pretty recent. And they
You've been busy.
follow. I know. It's been great. I love it. I feel
Yeah.
yeah, so the initial book follows this woman named Evelyn Bishop who was a spy during World War II. And she fell in love with one of her other spies, Nick Gallagher. And after the war, he betrayed her and he broke her heart. And so she's now back in Los Angeles where everybody expects her to go back to a life as a socialite. And she's like, that doesn't quite fit anymore. So she becomes a private investigator. And when the man she's following is murdered, she runs into Nick at the crime scene.
Oh,
So they
okay.
decided to team up for one last mission. And it's very much the romantic triangle angle of, well, they get to back together. They used to be so in love. She's in love with somebody else. Um, and then the second book is the continuation of their story and what they are up to and where their relationship is and where they're going from there. And
It's really good.
Yeah.
thank you. Yeah, it's supposed to be one of those things that you pick up on the way to an airplane and you enjoy. You know, hopefully you find it well written and not a waste of time. And you're like, oh no, I got into this. Like someone I know was like, I stayed up way too late because I was reading your book. And that to me is the
That's
best
so
compliment.
I was gonna say, that
flattering.
is so flattering.
Yeah.
That's so cool. And it's going to be a trilogy, is that correct?
Yeah, it's going to be a trilogy. I'm writing the third book now, and it's called Echoes of Infamy. The second book deals with a little bit with the Berlin airlift, and the third book deals with after effects of the Japanese internment on the West Coast.
Wow.
Yeah. Yeah, and it's nice being able to bring real things that happened into history into the books that I write.
A lot of research, I bet.
A lot of research. Yeah.
Yeah.
But, research is great. I love being able to, find books and listen to them on audiobooks and be like, okay, I'm going to go for a walk. And they spark so many ideas. Like there's things that you never know. And you're like, oh my God, my character could do this thing. Or, oh my God, my character could do that. Or, oh, this is another person's motivation. And really being able to fall in love with the story and see where it takes you. And it's really great when you're stuck on plot to be like, okay, let me just go do more research.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's so fun.
Yeah.
The fun part of writing.
Yeah, exactly.
World building.
Yeah. Seems like you like to write about spies. So
Yeah, I was gonna say
Briarheart
that.
as
Yes.
well.
I'm noticing the spy trend.
Yeah, it's not even necessarily spies. I love to write about strong women. I think that like the character of Evelyn Bishop was based on my grandmother who, she really wanted to become a doctor. And her parents told her that that was not an acceptable career for a woman. So she got married and she had 6 kids. And, to the very end of her life, she always regretted that she never got to be a doctor. And so for me, looking at my character of Evelyn Bishop, I really wanted to look at somebody who did a path that surprised people, that wasn't what everybody else did, and kind of like set my grandma free. Be like, go do the things, like go do whatever it is you want. And, and I think that the character of Sam in Brideheart is great because she's really strong and, physically strong, emotionally strong, but also there are parts in her life that are lacking. And the fact that they're lacking doesn't make her less strong. It doesn't make her less of a woman. It's just all of us have stuff that we have going on. All of us have stuff that we want to fix about ourselves. And I think there's something really beautiful about seeing strong women, getting to understand their personalities, getting to see that strength isn't being hard. A lot of times strength is knowing how to ask for help and knowing how to reach out for people in your life and being confident in your decisions. And I think for me, especially in my 20s, that was a really hard place for me to get to.
Yeah. I love that. I love that. Okay, we should transition to rapid fire if you're ready.
Ladies and gentlemen, we are now preparing for rapid fire questions.
So what is your favorite rom-com and why?
My favorite rom-com is Princess Bride.
Ooh.
I know it's such a great movie. I think it's hilarious. I think there are so many iconic scenes. And I always think of like inconceivable. I do not think that word means what you think it means.
Yeah.
I love it because everybody is so fully realized. Like you love all of the characters. And for Buttercup, she's awesome and she's flawed, and the way she loves someone is flawed. And the misunderstanding between her and Wesley when he comes back, he's like, well, you're going to go marry this guy. And she's like, I'm not because I want to.
Yeah.
I just
Mhm.
love the
It's
idea of
really,
how
really
they,
good.
yeah, how they find their way back to each other. And, you know, she's not sitting in the back. Like, you know, that whole like dagger at the end, she has it. She's going to use it. And I just love that. I really love her strength.
Okay, next question. Do you have a favorite rom-com trope to write? I'm not actually sure if
Yeah.
have you written rom-coms? I mean, there were some tropes kind of in Bride Hard that I
Yeah.
recognized, but
I really love rom-coms when they're doing something other than falling in love.
Yeah.
So, you
Mhm.
know, obviously Bride Hard it's this action movie. And in the initial draft, we had a love story in there that got taken out.
Mhm.
But I think in Bride Hard, the love story really is between Sam and her best friend.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
But I love that that comes through and we learn about it because they're saving their friends. They're saving their family. They're saving this wedding.
Mhm.
Yeah.
I love that.
Yeah, I love that too. It's like a
Platonic
friendship.
rom-com.
Yeah,
Yeah.
platonic rom-com.
Mhm.
Okay, do you have a favorite outfit from a rom-com?
Wow, that's such a great question. Um, I think honestly, I really, really loved Julia Roberts' wardrobe in Notting Hill.
Yeah, that's a good one.
Mhm. It's a good
Yeah.
one.
It was like casual but chic.
Yeah.
So chic.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Did she have a beret at one point? I can't remember,
I
but
think
I
in one of the
do.
movies,
I
maybe.
think so, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. I very classic. I love the aesthetic of that one for sure.
Yeah.
Do you have a favorite rom-com line that comes to mind or a moment from a rom-com you love?
Oh, yeah. It's in when Harry met Sally,
Mhm.
and he comes up to her at the very end and he's like, I'm
Mhm.
here. I'm gonna badly mangle this, so I apologize. But it's where he says, like, I'm here because when you realize somebody is the love of your life, you want the rest of your life to start immediately.
Yeah.
And
So sweet.
I love that. It feels a lot like love to me.
Yeah.
You know, that idea of when you meet someone and you know it's right and you're like, no, I want this. Like I'm in. I'm putting all my chips in. I want this.
Yeah.
That's really
Yeah.
beautiful.
Have you seen any rom-coms recently that you'd recommend?
Embarrassingly, I have not been to see a movie since Deadpool last summer.
It's been a
Can't.
while.
Fair, yeah.
Wow. So no, I haven't seen any rom-coms recently, but I did recently see Black Bag, which
Hmm.
is not a rom-com. It's the recent Steven Soderbergh movie.
Okay.
But it's Michael Fassbender and it's Kate Blanchett, and they play a married spies.
I was gonna say, here
And
comes the spy
Mhm.
theme again.
yeah,
Spies.
exactly. The spy theme. But you know, stuff doesn't blow up. It's a very psychological movie
Mhm.
of you start the movie and he thinks that maybe his wife is a traitor,
Mhm.
and it kind of goes through, and the story throughout is how much they love each other. And so their relationship is really core, and the question of what would you do for somebody you love?
Mhm.
Yeah.
Yeah, that sounds good. I've heard good things
If
about that movie.
Yeah.
yeah, I haven't heard of it. I'll watch it. If money didn't matter, what's a rom-com or a project that you would
Yeah.
just love to make next?
Oh, that's such a good question. I actually have in my head a rom-com set at the Olympics between skiers and snowboarders that I
Love
really want to write.
that.
Yes, please.
Yeah.
We've
Yeah.
talked
So
about
That
that,
this
would be
before. That there
amazing.
needs to be
yeah,
an Olympic themed rom-com.
absolutely.
100%.
Yeah.
I am so on board. I also love like anything with like ice skating and
Oh,
snow,
yeah.
like ice skating movies.
Like
I'm
Cutting Edge.
in. Yes,
Oh my,
Cutting Edge.
I love that movie so much.
And there was this TV show, I think it was called like Spinning Out on Netflix. And
Oh,
it was canceled after a season, but I
yeah.
was so into it. It was like this ice skating drama romance. So
Yeah.
I'm in.
So we'd love to
Yeah.
hear, what's on the horizon for you? What are you working on? And like, how can people stay up to date with you, or stay in touch with you online? And Shout out any
Great. Yeah.
upcoming.
So right now my manager has a new script that I wrote, and we're in the process of trying to package it and put it together so we can shoot it, which is really exciting. Um, Ironically, it is set at a wedding. I clearly have that on my brain. But it's not a comedy. It's very much a drama. Um, and tonally kind of goes totally, it's like, oh my gosh, I want to say Gossip Girl, and that is not Gone Girl. Okay, so totally, it's like Gone Girl, except that you like all of the people and it has a happy ending.
Okay, cool.
Yeah.
That's exciting.
Yeah, and then beyond that, I'm finishing up the book, and I'm excited to start a new screenplay soon. And in terms of finding me online, I have a Facebook account, I am on Instagram, and I have my own website, ShainaSteinberg.com.
Awesome. Okay, we'll include everything in the show notes, and everyone should see Bride Hard. June 20th onwards. It's in theaters, so we're excited to see it too.
Oh, great. Yeah.
Thank you so much for coming on today.
This was so fun.
Thank you so much for having me. This has been so much fun.
This has been an episode of When Isabel Met Aviva. Thank you so much for listening. If you want to stay up to date with our episodes, please subscribe. Bonus points if you leave us a positive review. You can follow us on Instagram at When Isabel Met Aviva and on Blue Sky at When Isabel Met Aviva.
You can also find our personal profiles on Instagram and Blue Sky too. Feel free to reach out if you have any questions or need any advice about your screenwriting career, or if you just want to obsess over rom-coms with us.
And don't forget to watch and write as many rom-coms as possible.